Good morning, everybody. Give everybody just a second to make sure you're connected up. And Carolyn just let everybody in. All right. Well, it is right at a minute or so after 10. We're going to go ahead and get started. On behalf of the Tennessee Chamber, my name is Bradley Jackson. I want to thank you all for joining us today. I know in Nashville it's a rainy day. It's a good day to maybe catch up on some legislative issues. This session is a busy one for the Tennessee Chamber. Thank you all for coming or joining us on our Back to Business conference. Typically we have this conference session kicks off every year, so we're glad to have it this year at the beginning of the session to highlight a number of really important issues that are coming up. There's been over 1,700 bills that have been filed in the legislature, so there's a lot of activity, and we hope to give you all a good perspective today of what the Chamber is looking at. And also, the state of Tennessee is looking at as well. A few housekeeping items. Appreciate our friends in the press. Wanted to let everybody know some members of the press may be viewing this conference for those who are presenting or talking on our conference. Some speakers will be sharing their presentations in presentation mode. If you'd like to adjust the size of your presentation, you can use the slider in the middle of your screen while they are presenting. Also, if you have any questions throughout the conference, please be sure to enter those in the chat box. We don't mind answering those, and our speakers have agreed to those. In addition, we are going to have a survey going on through the conference. I think we're going to ask a couple of questions. We'll have the first question here pretty soon, but the surveys really help us to gauge, business leaders, any ideas or thoughts you have about our current state of economy or the legislative session or issues. So keep an eye out for those. I'm also going to introduce our first speaker, Commissioner Butch Ely with Tennessee Department of Finance and Administration, who's going to join us today. Commissioner Ely, we're thrilled to have you. Commissioner Ely, really for those of us inside state government and around it, the Commissioner of F&A is really probably one of the most powerful and influential commissioners of all state departments and agencies. It takes a managing role in leading Tennessee's nearly $40 billion budget and implementing that. So it's a big task, and we appreciate Commissioner Ely and his work. For those of you that work with Commissioner Ely, he's a great person, knows state government extremely well. Prior to joining Governor Lee's administration, Butch is truly a businessman. He was a founder and CEO of Infrastructure Corporation of America. So for a lot of chamber members, he's been through the things that you go through and knows and understands the business perspective. Prior to that, he was a partner and eventually president at the Ingram Group, public affairs and advisory firms here in Tennessee. So he certainly knows his way around Tennessee. He's also a graduate from Belmont University right here in Nashville, received both his bachelor's and his MBA from Belmont. So Commissioner Ely, we are thrilled to have you here with us today.
Hey, Bradley, thanks. Good morning, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to be here with you on this rainy day. As Bradley said, a lot going on. A lot going on around the state, a lot going on here with session going on, as you said. And so appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys today. I know that for every one of us on this call, certainly 2020 has been a very challenging year. I'm gonna start sharing the presentation here so that we can jump into this. Is that up on everybody? Are we up, Bradley?
Yes, that looks good.
Okay. So, as I said, I know everybody on this call has been impacted over the last year. And I really believe when the governor made his State of the State address a couple of weeks ago, we certainly saw a lot of hope coming out of that address. And I think that I'm going to talk to you more on the financial side today and look at the budgetary impacts of what the governor presented. And really, I think in a lot of ways, this is a budget that kind of puts us back on track. The theme of this meeting that Bradley pointed out was back to business, and we certainly hope that that is the case in 2021. I think we made great strides certainly over these last few months, and that's where we're continuing to head down. I think that it's important to point out we start out in a really good position compared to other states around the country. Tennessee has been ranked #1 in the nation in fiscal stability, and we had that same ranking in 2019 and 2020 as well. And I'll just say that this is something that we appreciate. The governor recognizes, and I recognize that this is not something that any single governor or commissioner can do alone. It really is a testament to the great working relationship between the executive and legislative branches that our state has enjoyed for a number of years. And we're really proud of the kind of unwavering support that we've had in working together with the legislature. So when I think about, being able to talk to you today about the financial stability of our state and where we're headed with this distinction, the first thing that really comes to mind is being prepared. And this, without a doubt, Tennessee is much more prepared than most states were to be able to weather what we've been through over the last year. This slide kind of shows the volatility that we all faced over the last year. We start from economic expansion in late 19 to bracing for the downturn in March, to a deep drop in GDP and jobs by July. And so certainly we have been challenged, like all states, but I think we listened to our state economists, we listened to the national economists, and thanks to the strong, really bipartisan support over the years that we've had, then we really got to start this in a very strong position of strength. Another reason I would say that we were prepared is that we didn't waste any time in taking some action. So when this all happened last spring, a year ago, we really had two choices that the legislature and the governor were faced with. And one is with the advent of looking at what looked like it was going to be major revenue depletion. We really could do one of two things. We could kind of slash and burn, cut all the departments without really knowing the impact, or we could take a more measured approach. And so we worked with the legislature, and we had a very good collaboration of them giving us kind of some special leeway in looking at reserves and looking at making some reductions if they became necessary, really all while we bought time to be able to see how revenues came in. So I think one of the things that I'm proudest of, we put together a 3-year plan at the time in collaboration with the legislature, and I'm proud to say, being able to be here with you today, that 2 weeks ago when the governor made a state of the state, we introduced a structurally balanced budget. We'll talk more a little bit about some of the budgetary matters, but last year, because of the pullback in revenue estimates, we had to use non-recurring revenues to fill that gap, and so it was not a structurally balanced budget. But this year, we've been able to come back just in this 1-year time period to where we do have a structurally balanced budget. So one thing that let's see. Yeah. Let's see, we missed what I wanted to talk a little bit about is kind of what shaped our thinking. So as we entered into kind of the late summer period, it was time to really begin to dig down into the 22 budget. And so what this slide does is kind of show our thinking of what was shaping how we approach this budget. And this is a slide that Dr. Fox shared with us at the time, where we had a number of conversations with them, and it really shows the divergence of our economy over this past year, and this certainly impacted how we looked at this budget. Obviously, I know Rob's on this call. You know, restaurants and retail sector have not been good. But at the same time, we saw significant gains in other sectors of spending. And so things like building materials and grocery stores saw some big gains. Also, you know, we've been very used to having tremendous impact from travel and tourism. In 2019, we had 1.9 billion in state and local revenue, and that kind of spending and that kind of revenue that generated is very different from much of the revenue that we've seen this year, because, as we all know, you only build a house once so often, and the kind of revenue we were getting from people visiting the state is every year and participating in the economy. So I think the lesson to me in this is we can't approach our budget and our economy to where just because we're year over year in better shape or in decent shape, not until every segment is back are we going to rest. And so when you look at leisure and hospitality, we need to get that back into balance, and we're not going to rest until we do that. This slide is similar but different. It reiterates how consumers really have shifted spending away from more services toward taxable goods. And as we've seen in our recent collections, and as all of you know, internet sales have certainly been up significantly in the last few months. And of those taxable goods, there was a sizable shift to durable goods in that transition. And so it's really important for us to remember from a budgetary standpoint that we can't build a budget on recurring spending that may not be there in the following year. And so a lot of the purchases, a lot of the things that we've been seeing over this last year have kind of been propped up by some of the stimulus dollars that have been coming into the state. And so we just got to continue to be cautious about how we approach that, that we don't build a budget of recurring dollars that may not be there the following year. This next slide, I think, more than anything demonstrates that this recession has been very different from the others that we've seen over the last 50 years. This shows kind of the last 6 during that time period. And what this measures is the time to job recovery. And as you see there, over the last few years, it has taken a number of years to get back to where we originally were. And you can see here that in this situation with the pandemic, the drop occurred immediately and nosedived, and then bounced back up very quickly. But then you see it beginning to balance out and beginning to move to the right. And so this is just another thing that the governor and I looked at to say, you know, we're in a good position, but there's still a lot of uncertainties, and so we need to be careful and cautious about how we move forward in this budget. So this kind of brings us to today, and kind of acknowledging what has been shaping the thinking over these last few months. First and foremost, we need to be cautious. We do, though, because revenues have come back. We feel like that we can get back on track with a number of the priorities pre-pandemic that were proposed last year that had to be taken off the table, and we're putting a lot of those back on the table today. Clearly, we want to invest in what works, and we've made a push here in the last couple of years to get more evidence-based budgeting with what we do, and focus on what we know works versus investing in things that may not. And then, one of the things that is vital is that we deliver the services to the people of Tennessee. And what we tried to do in this budget was to ensure that while we were creating efficiencies, that we were not adding to headcount that we may not be able to pay for next year, and that we were still able to deliver the vital services people depended upon. And I think this budget that's introduced does that. And then lastly, really looking strategically at long-term investments. We'll talk about it a little bit more a couple of slides over, but investing in broadband, investing in local government infrastructure projects really are things that are going to have a long-term impact, and we're not adding to the recurring costs, but using those dollars wisely. One of the things that is clear to all of us is that every budget kind of tells a story and is a reflection of priorities of what we want to do. And the governor knew from the very beginning what we did not want to do in this budget, and we were not going to raise taxes. We were not going to have to utilize reserves or cut education, and we were not going to deplete our unemployment trust fund. And I know y'all seen stories from all over the country. Most states have not been in as good a shape. Tennessee is one of only 7 states where our unemployment trust fund is over $1 billion. And as we entered 2020, the aggregate trust fund balances of all the states was around $75 billion. And on net, these balances now stand around $25 billion. 19 of those states are in the red, and 22 states have had to seek loans from the federal government. And so we're really proud of the fact that we've been able to keep our trust fund at a level that has kept having from having to have an increase in unemployment taxes to business. We had Dr. Fox kind of looking into this and doing analysis, and his analysis came back and showed that that we've been able to avoid approximately 300% increase in unemployment taxes to business. It's every business that has to pay unemployment taxes by being able to keep our unemployment trust fund in a good position. So that was a big use of our coronavirus relief funds. And so everything that we try to do with those funds were to protect businesses from having to pay more taxes and being able to help those who were employed to keep their jobs, because businesses were able to stay open as much as possible, and even in some cases be able to hire additional people. And so I think that's been an important consideration. I'm just going to highlight real quickly, and then we'll answer some questions. But I just wanted to throw out some slides to show you where some of the targeted investments are in this budget that just was released. You've heard the governor talk a lot about his commitment to education, And so we were able to do an increase in salaries for teachers in this budget. You've also seen a lot about literacy over the last year, and we're very proud of the phonics-based approach and instruction that the legislature has joined with us in for this. And so we think this is making great strides for our students in proficiency. So also the BEP, which you always hear about every year, is fully funded, which is a vital part of keeping our education funded at the levels that it needs to be. On top of that, also continuing to invest in the charter school facility fund that helps with growing the presence of our high-performing charter schools. Higher ed's another big commitment with over 150 million in increased spending, fully funding the outcomes-based formula that they utilize. Also, y'all have heard in the last year a lot of discussion about the GIVE Act, which is the governor's investment in vocational ed. This is the commitment to foster the long-term regional relationship and partnership between TCATs, community colleges, K through 12, and then industry, as you represent, to be able to really address the skills gap that we see in a number of local workforces and be able to deal with that. So we're excited about being able to continue that program. This is a big one. This is a huge deal. As we all know, accessibility to high-speed broadband is an important economic factor throughout the state. Governor Haslam made some big efforts and achievements during his time of being able to help with a program that provided more broadband into our rural areas. This year, it just hadn't been enough. And so this year, the governor decided to go big and to invest in getting broadband to every community in the state of Tennessee. And we want to finish this job. And so this is what this $200 million investment aims to do. And working together with the private sector and with utilities, we hope to be able to do that. So we're excited about that as part of this budget that will really make a major impact all over Tennessee, but especially in the rural areas. One thing that has not been lost on us is the impact to local governments as well. It's stressed everybody's budget, and because of that, we're putting $200 million fund over of non-recurring funds to a local government infrastructure fund to be able to invest in one-time projects that they need to be able to update or to utilize. And so this was something that we had on the radar a year ago, and then with the pandemic, we ended up just pushing these dollars out to the cities and counties. But every city or municipality in the state will receive at least $30,000. This is based primarily on per capita, and every county at least 500,000, and that'll be distributed throughout every city and every county. So we certainly want to be able to support our local governments every way that we can during this process. I only got a couple more here. Capital investment. One of the things that we found, because we really took the actions early to be able to do a hiring freeze and to make sure that we did not spend the dollars that we didn't know that we would have, because that combined with the fact that we did have revenues come in and exceed our expectations, it really put us in a very positive position from a budgetary standpoint. And so what we ended up having with this budget is a lot of non-recurring dollars that could be spent. And so what we wanted to do is make sure that those are spent wisely. And so this represents the largest capital budget that we've seen, and certainly the largest amount of dollars put into capital maintenance, because we've got a huge backlog of deferred maintenance, and the governor feels strongly that we need to kind of take care of the assets that we already have. And even the new building or improvements that we have done have been targeted toward things that were renovations or additional build outs on floors that were existing, so that we kept our current assets in good condition. So kind of, I think wrapping up, we are cautiously optimistic. A lot of good things happening. A lot of you are beginning to see things get back to business, as you said on the front end, Bradley. And this budget keeps us in a strong cash position. We've got the largest reserve that we've ever had in case things go down. We've used conservative budget estimates, and really continuing to make sure that we're making strategic investments in the future. And so I'm gonna pause here, take any questions, but just appreciate what every one of you do day in, day out to keep people to work, because as we all know, that's the only way that we can keep the revenues flowing in to provide the services that the people of Tennessee need. And so I'm glad to be able to have this balanced budget, and look forward to working along with you this year. Bradley, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Commissioner. And I think we do have a couple of questions. And the first one's actually from right here at the chamber offices in the room, Rob Mortensen.
Commissioner, I've heard you are one of the best FNA commissioners of all time. Is that true?
We didn't know that was.
No, I'm gonna pass on that.
All right.
I shouldn't have mentioned your name earlier.
I know, I'm sorry.
Commissioner, another one that we actually had text in, just kind of and this one's really more of a special interest question than anything. What's it been like your first year as commissioner? Like, what's the budget process been like? What are some of the surprises and maybe some of the things you expected that came to fruition?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a good question. I would say that I certainly had no idea that I would be sitting here in front of Sam Houston this a year ago, even this time a year ago. It's interesting, as you all know, Commissioner McWhorter Stewart was in this role, and the governor asked him to move over to head up the Unified Command Group to focus solely on the pandemic. And so the governor called me a couple of weeks after that and said, what have you been thinking on this commissioner of FNA? And I said, well, I sent you several names that are all great people to look at. And he said, no, I wasn't talking about that. I was talking about what you thought about it for you. And I said, well, I hadn't thought about it at all. And he said, well, think about it and talk to Ginger, because I want to announce it next week. So I didn't have much time to think about it, but it didn't take long. Really, my role as COO before this, I had worked very closely with Stewart and had been really very involved with him in the budget process for the last 2 years. And so there was really not anything unexpected. I guess if there is anything that was a surprise, we met with all of the analysts, with all of the economists, state and national, last year, often, and everybody was certainly concerned about the downturn that we would face, and we've seen some of that. We've certainly seen unemployment go up from where it was, but we have been so much more fortunate. And so the biggest surprise to me, frankly, has been how we have rebounded in certain segments. If home improvement and the things that we talked about earlier, I never would have dreamed that would be the case. It has been the case. And so I'm thankful for that and excited for that for all of us in business. But as I said, we can't let up in making sure that we do what needs to be done to get everybody back to work. We got a lot of jobs that are available and open out there. We need to connect the people looking for a job with a job, and get our business back to work like y'all are trying to do. So that would be probably the biggest surprise, and a very, very positive surprise, I might add.
Thanks, Commissioner. One final question actually comes from a member here in Middle Tennessee, and is it asking, has the administration made any provisions or preparations kind of in anticipation of the $1.9 trillion stimulus package that Congress is looking at currently?
Yeah, that's a great question. We certainly are following that closely, daily, keeping in touch with our delegation in Washington and keeping track on what's going on there. There looks to be no doubt that there will be a CARES Act 3.0 beyond what's happened now. What we believe is that if there is, that and we think that there will be, that most of those dollars, though, will be prescribed and allocated to certain type of spending. A lot of it continuing to go to schools. A lot of the CARES 2.0 did, and so I think that we will likely not have a lot of leeway from a state perspective as to where those dollars go. I think the federal government will be putting those dollars into certain programs and certain agencies, but we certainly will play a role in where those dollars, after they're allocated, in being able to continue to make sure that they're spent efficiently and wisely. And so we'll be working to do that through F&A and our kind of role in dealing with the agencies and departments for that. So we do think there'll be more funding continue to come, and which by the way, I mean, that, as I mentioned earlier, is the reason that we've been able to see a lot of the tax collections continue as they are. But it just depends on how sustainable that can be as to how long that keeps kind of propping us up. And so it just is one of those reasons that we have to continue to be careful and cautious about our spending pattern.
Well, thanks, Commissioner, and thank you for spending a few minutes with us this morning, and your team there. We can't compliment your team enough for all they've done for really the state over the past year. You guys have put in really some unprecedented work. So thank you, and
appreciate it. And let me end too by just thanking everybody on this call and what everybody does for Tennessee, because we can't function without business being able to conduct their business and prosper. And so we certainly want to, we feel, the governor feels like, and I do, that we've got to do everything that we can do to allow you to do what you do. And so we need to get away from bureaucracy and red tape and be able to allow you to function the best you can. So thanks for all you do, and we'll be seeing you soon. Thank you.
Thanks again, Speaker or Commissioner. So next we have our Speaker of the House, Speaker Cameron Sexton and Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally, two folks who are keenly aware of the budget process here in Tennessee, and somebody that I think all of us in the business community are appreciative of, especially because their work over the past year. First, I'll introduce both of them, but I'll start with Lieutenant Governor McNally. Lieutenant Governor first answered the call to public service in 1978 when he ran for the state house up in Anderson County. He won election and served 4 terms in the state house, and he first served on the Finance, Ways and Means Committee. His work on the Finance Committee in both the House and Senate would become his passion, and where he has made his greatest impact on the state up to this point. As chairman of the Senate Finance, Ways and Means Committee for a decade, Lieutenant Governor McNally oversaw the General Assembly's only constitutionally prescribed duty, the passage of a balanced budget. He recognized across the state as a finance and budget expert. McNally's leadership has been critical in keeping Tennessee's budget in balance and its AAA credit rating. In addition to his 26 years on the Senate Finance, Ways and Means Committee, he also served as chairman of the Senate Education Committee in the 102nd and 103rd General Assemblies. He was elected lieutenant governor by his Senate colleagues in 2017 and has served with strong leadership since then. Speaker Sexton, another friend of the chamber, is joining us today. And just a couple years ago, on August 23rd, 2019, Speaker Sexton was elected 83rd Speaker of the House in Tennessee. He's known as a pragmatic conservative, the 5th generation Tennessean, is currently in his 6th term, serving the 25th House District, which includes Cumberland, Van Buren, as well as Monterey, the city of Monterey, and Putnam County. Speaker Sexton previously served as a House Republican Caucus Chairman for the first half of the 111th General Assembly. As caucus chairman, Speaker Sexton expanded and grew conservative initiatives under the House Republican majority over the past 7 years. He also chaired the House Health Committee during the 109th and 110th General Assembly, and has served as Majority Whip in the 108th. I'll stop there, gentlemen, and we are so thankful to have you all join us. And I'll let the two of you decide kind of who to go first with the legislative update this morning.
I'll defer to Lieutenant Governor.
Governor McNally, go right ahead.
He's muted.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
I can hear you now.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to serve with Speaker Sexton. He's a individual who's really taken over the House at a very critical time. They were having problems, and he came in and straightened that up and has done wonderful work. And he's very easy and pleasant to work with. And I'm sure his conservative pro-business attitude has permeated through the entire House, and we really appreciate his service. I just very briefly, and then I'll turn it over to Speaker Sexton. The state, as far as revenues, as Commissioner Ely has mentioned, is doing well. We're concerned that a lot of those revenues might be one-time revenues, as we see them mainly in home construction, appliances, cars, some of the big ticket items. And also we are concerned about the new administration, what they'll do to us with the TennCare waiver. It's very critical right now under both House and Senate leadership, along with Governor Lee. We've got a block grant and are able to administer the program with a lot of flexibility and in turn savings, which we can reinvest in the program, as well as share with the federal government. But the federal government likes, particularly under this administration, to not be friendly to businesses, conservative principles, such as balancing the budget, keeping debt low. In fact, Tennessee has one of the lowest debts in the nation. Our pension system is stable and one of the most one of the top 3 systems as far as financial stability. And recently we won an award about the state being #1 in financial stability, and that coupled with low taxes just serves to help bring businesses into Tennessee, as well as help businesses get back on track a lot quicker. But I'll turn it over to my esteemed colleague and really appreciate his work that he does along with his members in the House and the House leadership team.
Well, thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And it's a pleasure to work with the Lieutenant Governor, who I've known for a very long time. And he is a great resource and mentor for me, and we work very well together. And our state owes him a huge debt of gratitude for everything that he's done in his entire career. And it looks like he is working today a little bit. They're wearing the pharmacy coat, and but I can't say enough nice things about him, and it's meant a lot to have his friendship and be able to have his ear when I'm trying to make some decisions and get guidance from him as we move forward. And I didn't get on and hear everything about Butch's comments, but what I will say is our budget's in a really good place. We came out of 2020, one of 7 states that has positive growth in the last 12 months. I think that what we did back in 2011 through 12 and all the way up until now between Governor Haslam and Governor Lee has set the stage for our state to be very successful long term, as long as we continue to watch the budget. I think one of the bigger issues that we're seeing is with as much money as Washington is printing and flooding out into the economy, trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars. It's holding the economy right now, but it could have a torpedo effect here in the next 18 to 24 months when that money leaves those individuals, and also the risk of inflation, I think, is a concern for us as we kind of watch what's happening out there from the feds. Here in the state, I think this is going to be a very good session for us. Obviously, we're going to focus on the budget, which we feel pretty good about right now. There's some big initiatives that we're trying to do. And one of the things that we're working on in the House with Lieutenant Governor McNally in the Senate is 2 things that I think would be very beneficial. As you know, during the pandemic, the state stimulus accountability group that the governor put together, that fortunately Lieutenant Governor and I served on, put a lot of money in the unemployment trust fund to make sure that businesses didn't get an increase in their unemployment fees. And I was at a meeting not too long ago in Louisiana, is $100 million in the hole, and the businesses are going to have a 4 times greater fee increase than they had the previous years, because they had to get it up to a certain level. But we have some legislation, and we're looking at the language right now that would bring some more security to the unemployment trust fund. It would change how we do unemployment in the state, and do it based off the unemployment rate. And the more weeks, you get more weeks based on the higher the unemployment rate. And so it's a way that I think North Carolina and Florida has doubled their unemployment trust fund in 2 or 3 years, and they made it through this pandemic without having to put a lot of money into a trust fund, because they had set it up for success many, many years ago when they were having problems. And so we're looking at that endeavor. I think another thing that might be interesting to businesses in the state, another piece of legislation that we're working on between the House and the Senate, is about property taxes and creating a cap, because you saw here in Nashville, a huge property tax increase by Metro that's really detrimental to businesses, on top of being shut down as well by Metro. And so we're looking at a type of system that will be determined based on a certain percentage of the market value. If it's 1%, so be it. But it's a very simple way to look at it. And you wouldn't have any more reappraisals until the time of a transaction happens. So you're kind of locked in at the purchasing price. So we're reviewing that, looking at how that would look, working with people outside the state and any economists, and seeing what that looks like for residential as well as commercial markets. So I'll finish there and just say it's a pleasure to be here today. Look forward to the many questions that you all have. And I really appreciate being able to serve alongside my good friend, Randy McNally.
Thanks, Speaker Sexton, Lieutenant Governor McNally. We do have a question from here in the room. There's a proposal that would bring consistency to how health boards or county mayors regulate in the time of a pandemic. And we saw it go through Speaker Sexton through a House subcommittee last week. What is your all's take on that bill?
Well, go ahead, Speaker Sexton.
All right, we'll flip it. I'll go this time. You can go next time, Lieutenant Governor. That bill passed the House. I think there's still some debate on if an additional amendment may be needed or not. But what I will say is as we've seen from the 6 independent health boards, they have really shut down businesses in those communities over the objections of elected officials. And so you have bureaucrats who are making the decisions with no accountability to the residents of that community. And then I think on top of it, if you've been following what's been going on in Memphis with the lack of vaccinations by that health board, and the number, it's close to 4,000, I think, doses now that have expired. They hadn't given over 50,000 doses that they still had in place. It's been an issue. And so we need to have some more accountability, I think, in that board, and allow it to let the elected officials make the final decision. Obviously, they can consult with the health board and their medical director or their pharmacist. But at the end, we need, in my opinion, we need to have the elected officials make that final decision.
Thank you, Speaker.
I'd certainly agree with the House. It's when you make decisions like that, it should be by elected officials. And I feel like that we will pass the bill. It might take some amendments on it, but I'm sure it will go through.
Thank you both. And from a chamber standpoint, we've gotten very similar feedback from businesses across the state to what you all are communicating this morning. So thank you for that. We'll go next to, if we've got anybody here joining us, any audience questions. Carolyn, I'm not sure if I think we may have one or two queued up.
Hey, Ryan, it's Clint Hall.
Oh, hey, Clint.
Hey, I was just going to chime in just real quick and just want to, of course, thank the speaker, both speakers, and Lieutenant Governor, and just for their tremendous work on the COVID liability bill. Tennessee really was a leader in that effort, and it created a lot of certainty for our business and for numerous other businesses, organizations, nonprofit schools, and it was really because of, I think, their leadership and the leadership in the House and the Senate that made that happen. And so just again, wanted to really let them know that we're appreciative. We're seeing efforts in other states that are having a lot of challenges and a lot of more difficulties, and we're just thankful that we're here in Tennessee. So again, thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Clint. And also Governor Lee was instrumental in the passage of that bill. And
Very true.
it was a team effort, and it's in conjunction with groups like NFIB and the Chamber. we were able to make it happen. And I really do appreciate the chamber's efforts, not only on that issue, but on a number of issues that are really helping our economy and helping growth in Tennessee.
Thanks, guys. Is there anything else you would like to add, or Carolyn, do we have anything else in the chat window we'd like to ask?
There's nothing in the chat right now, Ryan. It looks like we've addressed everything.
Excellent, gentlemen. Thank you all very much for your time this morning, and we'll let you get back into your Friday. Thanks so much for your leadership and for being with us.
Well, thank you
Thank you
all.
all.
Thank the members of the chamber for the work that they do, both in the political scene as well as the economic scene. We really do appreciate what y'all do.
Yeah, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Thanks again.
Take over. Hi, guys. I'm Lauren Cecil with the Tennessee Chamber. I'm going to introduce our industry roundtable. First, let me see if Stefan with the Farm Bureau is on, and Mandy. I think I saw Mandy earlier. Just want to make sure they're online. And then while they're seeing if they're on, we'll get Katie and Rob to come up here. So we have Stefan with the Tennessee Farm Bureau, Rob Mortensen with the Hospitality Association, Mandy Young with Butler Snow, and Katie Lane Bailey with Waller. So while they come up here, I guess, Mandy, if you want to start off, just introduce yourself and kind of what do you see some of the biggest issues in the legislature that will be addressed this session?
Good morning. I'm Mandy Young. I'm a lawyer and a contract lobbyist at Butler Snow. I've been doing this about 27 years, along with lots of my friends on this Zoom call. I picked a couple of representative bills for a couple of my clients, one of which is Senate Bill 874. It is a bill dealing with continuing education and taxes on continuing education as a digital good. Many organizations like our client, the Tennessee Society of CPAs and the Tennessee Medical Association and the Tennessee Bar Association provide continuing education. And there has been an ruling out of revenue that is a digital good, and therefore those 501c3 and C6s would have to collect sales tax on those continuing education events that are actually being watched on, just like this one is, over Zoom. So we are working with all those entities to try to pass that and working with revenue to try to narrow it as much as possible to minimize the fiscal note. Then I'll mention, I do a lot of health insurance and all insurance. So I'll mention a couple of bills in that area, Lauren. One is Senate Bill 530 and House Bill 635 by Senator Briggs and Chairman Smith, Robin Smith. It deals with medical necessity. Very quickly, that bill affects the definition of medical necessity in over 20 locations in the Tennessee Code. We've not had opportunity to find out the intent of it from the two sponsors, but it does affect the definition in the workers' comp sections and creates a presumption that the doctor's care is correct and whether it's following medical protocols. And that's a pretty big change in the workers' comp area. So we're watching that bill. Two other bills, briefly. One is the Senate Bill 1617 by Senator Reeves. It's obviously the PBM regulation bill. We're meeting with the sponsors this week. But many of you will now be affected by this legislation because of the Supreme Court case named PCMA v. Rutledge. And ERISA plans are no longer going to be exempt if, as we interpret it, if the law affects pricing and not benefits. That bill, 23 cents of every dollar of health plans now go is the highest spend on pharmacy. Then whether it's hospital stays, doctors, 23 cents of it goes to pharmacy. And PBMs save their plan sponsors, all of you on this call, as well as fully insured groups in Tennessee, over 35% on their drug spend. This bill will try to definitely limit and cause costs to go up as it relates to that, so that we will no longer be saving each of you that much money. So that's Senate Bill 1617. And last but not least, Bradley wanted me to mention also one more, which was House Bill 1379 and Senate Bill 425. A very impassioned group of men and women are trying to pass a fertility mandate. So that each of the plans would have to cover fertility coverages, which is a very expensive, probably the most expensive health insurance mandate in my 27 years. While a very passionate group of women and a very needed coverage for those that want to have children, it is a very costly one for the health insurance industry. So Lauren, that was short and to the point in under 5 minutes, which is very hard for me to do.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, Stefan, do you want to go? And then we'll hit the room, people in the room.
Yes, Lauren, can you hear me okay?
Sure.
Good deal. As has been mentioned, my name is Stefan Malp. I'm Director of Public Policy with Tennessee Farm Bureau. I've been with Farm Bureau for about 26 years. This will be, after this session, will be my 26 and a half session. So started in the middle of one back in 1995, but worked for the organization that long. So as in regard to some of the bigger issues that we believe will happen this session, I'm going to really broad brush it from a standpoint of just what we have noticed going into this session, maybe not so much on issues, but this is a kind of a unique time, and I would mention this especially for your members out there, and would tell our members that you have General Assembly members who want to take back up issues that maybe they ran on in their campaign or something that's going on in their district, and those bills have been filed, and that's something they want to have happen, while at the same time there are critical issues overall because of this pandemic that need to be dealt with relative to education, questions that still need to be answered there as well, the governor's budget, some other initiatives that the governor wants to take on that maybe would not have come about because of the pandemic. So you really have, in my mind, and what I'm seeing are two avenues of critical issues, one being just deal with what the pandemic has brought, make sure businesses are okay, make sure individuals are okay. It was talked earlier about the vaccine programs. I know I was in a legislator's office in a small rural county, and there were 2,000 doses of vaccines that were going to expire, and he was having to deal with that situation. So you have that going on that would not be happening in a normal session, while at the same time they want to run the issues that they came up there to deal with after an election. Will there be enough time for that to happen, and what should take priority? So I just mentioned that from a standpoint of regarding the question of what are some of the big issues the legislature will address. I think overall that's going to be a dynamic that I hope the two don't intersect and cause some issues, and that we who are representing people and organizations up there will have to pay attention to. As far as some of our issues in the Farm Bureau this year, I'll just mention about three. One is House Bill 1163 by Representative Lambert and Senate Bill 1368 by Senator Bell. And it is in regard to local boards of health. You think, why would the Farm Bureau get involved with that? We've seen a couple of cases where that ambiguity in the law regarding those local boards of health have been seen as an avenue by activist groups to regulate agriculture, cause lost economic revenue coming into the county for businesses, lost tax dollars in the county, and ultimately they did not do it, but it had a lot of fear for those who were wanting to invest in that county for those purposes. We need that law clarified that they cannot regulate agriculture, and we would submit that other businesses should be concerned about that as well. There's legislation. I don't know if this will be the year to try to streamline sales tax exemptions for agricultural products, machinery, and other items used in production or harvesting of food and fiber. And I think for you all members in the Chamber of Commerce, that would be important, especially if you're in the retail business, because it gets very confusing based on our law today. What is exempt, just like the manufacturer's exemption, what's exempt for agriculture and what's not. We would like to clarify that. And lastly, just something I would mention is we're trying to keep a state fair in the state of Tennessee. Why is that important? Maybe to some of you on this call is that if you look at other state fairs in other states across the country, it is an opportunity at least one time a year for industry, manufacturing, business, and as well as agriculture to highlight in that kind of nostalgic time-honored event, highlight what's going on in the state. We want to try to keep that going. Lauren, I've tried to be very quick, and I hope I've answered those questions, but yeah, I'll leave with that, and I know we'll get into other questions as well.
You did. That was great. Thank you. Rob, you are next.
Thanks, Lauren. My name is Rob Mortensen. I represent the restaurants and hotels and all things hospitality and tourism across the state, and even parks and campgrounds. And as you all know, looking at the slides that Butch put on the screen, that our industry got hit the hardest this past year, and we're sorry for that, but I think we're pulling out of it. Interesting thing about the industry is that it's impacted us differently across the state. In Memphis and Nashville, we got hit the hardest. In both those cities, those cities are cities of large groups and gatherings, and that's where this impact really hit us hard. If you move east and you're in Gatlinburg or Sevierville, they did fairly well last year. And in fact, Smoky Mountains National Park had its biggest year ever. More people visited the park last year than any time in its history. So a lot of folks trying to get away from other people, and that's impacted the industry. So a couple of things. We really worked a lot with the state, both the legislature and the administration. They've been extremely helpful. We've had a lot of senators and representatives reach out to us, ask us how they can help. We've got a couple of bills that we're looking at. One of them probably you all have heard, and we're calling it our curbside pickup or to-go bill. And this is allowing folks to sell liquor by the drink when they pick up the food. We've had a little confusion around this bill. I think a lot of folks think this is about delivery. It's not. It's about our restaurants taking food from their establishment inside the building to the curbside and handing it to somebody in the car and letting them take it home. So we feel good about where we are on that bill. A lot of great support, working with the retail liquor folks. We feel like we got a little bit of their support as well, and hoping to improve that. So the other big area is a lodging tax that we're dealing with this year. Interestingly, for the past 40 years, Tennessee has been putting taxes on hotels and even campgrounds, anything that has to do with lodging. And a lot of that money goes to the promotion of tourism, which is a good thing. What we have found out is that a portion of those hotels in those cities are unconstitutional. And so we'll be fixing that and trying to move some of those dollars more towards tourism and hospitality. There's several other bills that are out there around supporting restaurants and some of the smaller businesses, which we'll be behind as well. So excited about this new year, and get out there and eat in your restaurants. All right.
Katie?
Good morning. My name is Katie Lane Bailey. I'm an attorney at Waller. This will be my 15th legislative session. Many of you knew me as a legislative assistant to Richard Montgomery many years ago. As Rob mentioned, most of our clients, and I'm going to approach this, I think, from more of a broad brush. I think most of our clients are certainly interested in and supporting all sorts of economic recovery efforts. They're paying close attention to vaccine distribution related issues, employment practice legislation, and really anything I think that would hinder our ability to kind of bounce back as best as possible from the downturn that we've all just experienced. I know that many of our clients who are large corporations, excuse me, are paying close attention to a lot of the social issues being discussed. Tennessee is well positioned, as we all know, to be one of the few states to benefit from the post-COVID urban flight out of states like New York and California, and many of the CEOs of our client companies that would be moving here or have moved here from larger urban areas, or just paying attention to how closely our legislature addresses some social issues. You know, we are pretty involved in property rights as it relates to the landlord-tenant relationships. And we've been very engaged more at the federal level and quite frankly at the local level, but with the eviction moratoriums, trying to strike a very healthy balance between tenant assistance and mitigating the financial impact on landlords. Yesterday, the CDC eviction order was found unconstitutional by a judge in the U.S. District Court of Eastern Texas. And the question that lawsuit considers is, does the federal government have authority to order property owners not to evict specific tenants? It certainly does not address whether or not a state may regulate residential evictions. And so that is something that we are monitoring closely and working kind of alongside state legislators and the governor's administration just to ensure that that balance is in fact found. We also represent the school superintendents, and something that's of significant importance to them that we have been working on for a while is obviously funding. So student enrollment, ADM, is the primary driver of funds generated by the BEP, a funding formula that considers 47 components, most of which are based on student enrollment. As a result of COVID, many students have exited the public school system to pursue alternative learning options, such as virtual, private, homeschool. However, data indicates that these students, if not all, most will return. And so because there is a lag time, a 1-year lag time in the receipt of funding from LEAs, we are working alongside legislative leadership and the administration to discuss options to not decrease the funding for the 21-22 school year. Some of you may have heard this referred to as the BEP hold harmless legislation, but really what it boils down to is ways that we can in fact maintain that same level of funding going into the 21-22 school year. And then finally, I would offer an alternative position on a bill that was previously mentioned, Senate Bill 1617. We represent a number of companies who actually are in favor of the legislation and consider that it brings transparency to a complicated relationship and implements some protections for patients. So certainly that will warrant a very thorough debate and consideration on both sides of that issue. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, everyone. We have one quick question before I can hand it over to Bradley if he's on to give the chamber legislative update. But this question's for Rob, if you could elaborate more on the lodging tax requirement.
So yes, so lodging tax came out about 40 years ago, and it was created in Tennessee for the purpose of promotion of tourism, right, in certain areas. When it came out, it set a limit of 5% to go on top of hotels and motels. What we've done over the past 20-something years is created exceptions to that law, and we've gone above the 5%. So in a lot of cases, we've got counties and cities both that have taxes on our hotels that are both 5%. And so the exception that goes beyond the 5% is the portion that is unconstitutional. There are probably 40 cities and counties across the state that are deemed unconstitutional, and we'll have to go back in and completely redo that legislation. They cannot be grandfathered in. It's got to be put back into law, and so we've got a lot of work to do on that front.
Very interesting.
I hope that helps.
Bradley, are you on? No,
I am. Yeah.
Okay, do you give maybe a 30-second overview of our legislative package? Because I think we have to move on.
Sure. Briefly for the chamber, similar to what Stefan talked about, we are really focused on pandemic recovery primarily. So we've got, a number of things we're working on. One, and I'll go through these really quickly, is exempting grants that the state gave out as part of their CARES Act funding to businesses, exempting those from state taxation. We've been, plan to work with the Administration Department of Revenue to pursue that issue. We think that's very important. We have workers' compensation legislation that is brought by industry to really tighten up on misclassification. A lot of our businesses are harmed by that. So we want to create a fair and balanced approach to that. There's legislation dealing with the local health departments. I know both speakers mentioned that. That's important to the chamber, that there be consistency around the orders of local health departments, because as Stefan mentioned as well, they can impact, manufacturers, retailers, really anybody with the broad authority they have. Right to work is vitally important to us. Establishing that in our Constitution, it's really a bedrock around economic development. Unemployment, we'll be watching unemployment. I know there's a number of proposals there. We look forward to working with the speaker and make sure, our fund stays balanced and that employers are treated fairly around that. I will say around economic development and local chambers, for all those on, we've monitored a number of proposals. So far, there's nothing major out there. There is one proposal that we worked on last year that we informed you all about, and that requires members of industrial development boards to fill out an ethics requirement, or just to note, which is really common for a lot of other state government agencies. When the bill was proposed, it was very arduous and difficult to comply with. We have talked to the sponsors and minimized that, and we'll be glad to share that. So that's very quick. We've got a lot of other stuff. If you have any questions, let us know.
Thank you. Are there any last minute questions before we move on? We're good? All right. Thank you to the roundtable panel. I know that was really quick, and it can be a lot of information at once, but if you have any questions, follow-up questions, feel free to contact us and we can forward those along. So hand it back over to Ryan. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren, and thanks to the panel for joining us here today. On to the last part of the program this morning, but we actually have two survey questions we want to run by everyone who's joining us here. And Carolyn, if we can go ahead and get the first one pulled up. So if you don't mind, please answer the survey question. Obviously, it'll be kept confidential. The question is Tennessee's economic recovery better, worse, or about where you expected at the current time? Wow, so we can see live answers on our end, and it looks overwhelmingly, everyone thinks it's our economy is better. And we can go ahead and show the results, Carolyn. 76% say our economy is better than they expected. No one said it's worse than they expected. And about 25% said it's just as expected. All right, Carolyn, we can go to the next one. So the second question this morning, what percentage would you rank your organization's return to normal / pre-pandemic operations? What percentage would you rank your organization's return to normal / pre-pandemic operations? Good, lots of diverse answers coming in here. All right, Carolyn, we'll go ahead and post that. So you can see it's really almost evenly dispersed. Less than 25% is the least popular answer. After that, it's across the board. So excellent. Carolyn, thank you very much. We'll get on to our final guest for the Back to Business conference this morning. Our last guest is really somebody who doesn't need much of an introduction. Most of you have gotten to know him in his first chairman, year and a half in the General Assembly. But we're going to let him introduce himself. First, Chairman Vaughn, really from the beginning, tell us a little bit about you, give us your biography, but most importantly, before you get too much into that, tell us the best barbecue restaurant in Memphis.
That's known to start civil wars there. But see, when you're a true barbecue aficionado, you can't just broad brush it. You've got to go through the different types that you have. The best ribs in Memphis is Central Barbecue. I find the best chopped shoulder to be Captain John's out here in Collierville, my hometown. That's my favorite. The best cheese plate is the Rendezvous. And I would say for the best overall broad brush of whatever on the top run, the Germantown Commissary rates pretty high too. So those are just some names that my family and I enjoy. But to kind of tell all y'all's folks, and I know y'all got, I see so many of you, you've all got that glassy eyed stare of like, oh, I've been Zooming for a long time. I don't know what this guy's going to tell me about. I'm over policied at this point. I'll tell you a little bit briefly about myself, and I guess I'd probably want to reassure you more than anything is that I'm not crazy. That's the one thing that I want you to understand is that I try to approach everything in moderation. But my name's Kevin Vaughn. I'm from Collierville. I've lived here for 30 years. Before that, I was raised in Bolivar, Tennessee, and so I enjoy the distinction of coming from a economically distressed county background. Still have my family farm there, but I also am fortunate enough to represent one of the more affluent areas of the state. So I bring kind of both ends of the spectrum, a very struggling rural economic situation to kind of a nice suburb outside of Memphis is where I live and do my business. I'm a graduate of, I like to say, University of Memphis State. I'm an electrical engineer. I have my professional engineering license, but I practice as a real estate developer. I own a real estate firm, and so I'm both a licensed engineer and a licensed real estate broker. Married, 2 kids, adult kids, and I was first elected to the General Assembly in 2017. So this is my 3rd session. I kind of came in at halftime. I like to call myself, I was in the red shirt freshman class of 2017, and I joined there. And so last year was my first full term, and then this year I was asked to come back and serve my district. So that's kind of the background of who I am. And hopefully, if you have any questions or anything, we can see those later on. And I'm sure Ryan's got some other stuff I need to talk about.
Yeah, Chairman. What are just your general philosophies on governing?
Well, I think we've got plenty of laws. Everybody always says, man, what's your agenda? And I'm like, I need to play some defense. What I see right now from governing more is problem solving, which I enjoy doing. I'm an engineer. I like to see equations balanced, but I know that as technology evolves, regulatory burdens are pushed down from the feds. Sometimes businesses need adjustments or reliefs in their operating structure. And so I think the less government, the better.
So we, as a chamber and other business groups, have had a chance to really meet with you over the past few weeks. What are some of your business and non-business priorities for the upcoming session, just for the audience here to better get to know?
Well, it's interesting because what happens is you have things that are specific to your district, and then you have things that are industries or you get exposed to things that you believe are either inequities or unfairness that you want to try to get those things balanced back. I'm going to be taking a dive into this unemployment trust fund issue of maybe perhaps looking at the seeing if we can build a little better mousetrap than we have today. That's going to be an ongoing push of mine. I'm also looking at trying to develop a program which will push more medical professionals, create more residencies throughout our hospitals, because we're fortunate in the fact that we have so many med schools, but we lose a great quantity of our doctors to other states because we don't have funded residencies in our program. Let's see. I'm working on a historic tax credit for rural areas so that developers can have an opportunity for a little better return. We're the donut hole. All of our surrounding states have one. We don't have a program like that. I think that that could benefit many of our rural communities. And then one issue that I'm going to be taking a stab at as well is allowing college athletes to be paid for their name, image, and likeness. So you can see I have a lot of irons in the fire with a lot of different subjects.
Yes, I'm glad you kind of mentioned some of those, and a lot of those will be moving through your committee and your subsequent subcommittees. I know the House implemented a number of rule changes to the committee system, but I think yours has some pretty specific rules or just chairman requests that you'll be abiding by this session. What are some of those updates?
Well, last year we had some rules, and this is some really getting down in the weeds legislating stuff that is how this is our rules for making the sausage, for lack of a better term. And that is we're allowing members to effectively defer a bill after they've calendared it. If, let's say that I bring a bill and I think it's the greatest thing since pockets on shirts, and I'm headed down to the committee room and somebody says, "Oh my gosh, do you know that this bill will destroy the fabric of America?" And I say, "Well, gee, I didn't realize it was that bad." And so it gives me an opportunity to defer that up to 3 times before it gets stuck on the last calendar. So that's one way that things have changed. The other thing is before we allow testimony in our committee, we've got to have 24-hour notice that somebody's wanting to testify on an issue. I'm going to be a stickler about that. I know, because what happens is when laws or when bills were brought forward, they're brought forward through subcommittees first, and I sit on both of the subcommittees that feed up through my full committee, and we do a lot of vetting. That's where really a lot of the hand-to-hand combat on bills takes place, is in that subcommittee setting. And so my thoughts are is that by the time it gets to the full committee, we have heard expert testimony. We've got people who have vetted this bill. So let's try to keep things going, because in these days in the General Assembly, things are really, really moving fast. And it's one of those things that I try to keep run a tight ship. But that's mainly it. The other thing is just rules of decorum and the way people need to be treated. People, we need to, as best we can, be friends and always be respectful.
So it's kind of ironic. My next question plays off of a question that we actually got from Clint Hall from the audience earlier, thanking the speakers for supporting COVID liability protections in the special session last year. You are a 2-time supporter of that. You voted for it a couple of times on the House floor. Just kind of tell us a little bit about, why you were so passionate about it at the time, and then how you're hearing from constituents and just generally the business community, how that law's been working.
I'm sorry, my Comcast is here to replace my modem, and so I was having to point the technician in the right direction.
Hey, I think we've got Comcast on with us here, so.
Hey, don't cut me off. Yeah, I've got about 10 minutes. So you can see we're having a few issues. Well, the COVID liability was something that I did feel strongly about, because in a period of unknown and everybody trying to do the best they can, I felt very strongly about the fact that there were varying degrees of advice that were coming out. There were varying degrees of people trying to protect themselves, and I understood the need for causes of action against people who were wantonly negligent. But whenever it comes to folks doing the best they can in a situation that we had not seen before, in an environment that we were being inundated by conflicting reports, particularly from the federal level, I just thought that folks like us needed to be protected when we were trying to do the right thing.
And have you heard any feedback about how you believe the law, or how others believe the law might be functioning so far?
I have not. I would say that it's probably functioning as intended, which is a deterrent to frivolous lawsuits. I haven't seen. there hasn't been some of our counselors on here may have other ideas, but I have not heard of people being suits being filed for negligence against organizations and facilities. And I think that probably the height that we raise the bar to be able to prove negligence probably assists in that. At least I'd like to hope so. You always hope that what you do actually has a positive impact on people in their daily lives.
And just some commentary here from the chamber. We've heard our language has been used as a model in a number of other states, and the drafters of that, both from industry and from the governor's office, the House and the Senate really did good work with that. So that's just the feedback we've heard from a number of folks across the country. Another question, Chairman, you've heard probably a variety of complications from businesses as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. What are some common themes there that you've heard from business owners about, issues they've had throughout the pandemic and maybe continue to have?
Overreaching health departments is the number one thing that we've had. Inconsistent application of made up rules on the ground that seem to be unevenly applied across the board. That's been one that has been one of the issues that I think it's a universal concern by everyone that, and what happens is, and I'm in full support of getting the decisions made into the hands of people who the public can have some type of retribution through the election process. Unappointed bureaucrats making decisions that have to do with people's livelihood, as well as the unintended, unforeseen, hey, this is great, we're really doing good at our disease control, but okay, we have drug overdoses, we've got suicides are up, we've got all these other social costs that are going to come to bear. I think that we just got the environment got a little bit out of balance there, and I think that it's going to be a good thing to bring everything back in. Whenever I've got a bill that's up that clarifies the fact that health departments do not have any authority when it comes to closing or opening schools, that only the local education authority has that ability. And my thoughts on that is that during a snowstorm, they don't call in this side of the country Tim Simpson or Dave Brown, or they don't call Lisa Spencer in Nashville and say, hey, Lisa, are you going to open or close the schools? They take advice from those professionals, and then they make the decisions with regards to the health and welfare of their students. And I think that a pandemic is not any different from that. Of course, it has a bigger scale and there's other implications, but I think the same truth of allowing LEAs to consult with experts and then make the decisions with regards to their school. I don't want anybody to say a snowstorm is equivalent to a pandemic. But that's my thought process on it is that consult the experts and then let the LEAs make the call.
Very good, Chairman. And as a follow-up, you mentioned the county health board bill that kind of brings consistency to all 95 counties, not just those 89. We had this similar conversation with the speaker and Lieutenant Governor earlier today. What do you believe the prospects of that bill passing the House are? Does it seem to have momentum?
It does to some degree, but I take a little bit exception to it, the way in its current form. What this does, the current bill in its current form, if it's unamended, gives that power to the county mayor. I would like to see it pushed further down beyond the county mayor point to where actual city mayors control their incorporated areas and the county mayors control the unincorporated areas within their counties. Because I think that in this case, and particularly in my county, Shelby County is the largest geographic county. We've got 8 incorporated municipalities. And I can tell you that some of the municipalities are 35 miles from our town. And so they have different conditions that way. And so I would like to see it, personally, I'd like to see it pushed a little bit further down to the city mayors, but that's something to be worked out between throughout the process. But I certainly agreed getting it out of the hands of the unelected bureaucrats and into the hands of people who can take a little bit bigger overview picture of it.
Thank you for that follow-up. So we have a number of audience questions that have come in the chat window and have been pushed to me here. And if you are one of those who submitted a question, feel free to pipe in, but I'll ask what I have in front of me here. The first one deals with right to work. So the chamber supports right to work provision to elevate right to work to our state constitution. Do you support this measure? You want me to move on to the next question?
Of course.
I'll add to that, Chairman. It's going to be really interesting in an election year to see kind of the dynamics of that on the ballot. Really, and you know, does it become a campaign issue for some folks? Also, it's going to be interesting to watch that come into play in the election dynamics next year, assuming it does indeed pass. Another very good question, and again, pipe up if this was your question. We hear a lot on the federal level about a $15 minimum wage. Those measures come through your committee. Will you support something like that?
No. See, for all you people who are just listening in, you're not getting these answers. So you'll need to turn your video on. No, I would not support a minimum wage increase. As a matter of fact, I've been really disappointed in the fact that the federal supplement equated to basically a $15 an hour. I thought that was somewhat of a disincentive. And listen, the free market is alive and well. The fact is that if you're having trouble finding employees, then you will raise your pay rate, and it becomes a relationship between an employer and an employee, what the value of that employee's time is. And I just frankly don't think we have any business getting there. I think the market will take care of that.
Very good. Justin, I saw you. Did you have a question or no?
Yeah, great to see you today, Mr. Chairman. There's a bill that's coming through the Banking and Consumer Affairs Subcommittee this week on E-Verify. Obviously, there's a lot of burdensome impacts to small business, and we've started to hear from some of our members about it. What do you see as sort of the future of that bill, and what are ways that we can kind of help minimize the impact to small business?
Justin, hey, I'll be honest with you. I have not reviewed that bill. What happens is, and for those of you who don't know the way we work, we get a new slate of issues every week. I'm still, I'm one of these guys that I'm still trying to run my business. I'm the definition of a part-time legislator. And so on Thursdays, I get home as quickly as I can, and I work Friday and Saturdays, and I do my prep work on Sundays, and then I speak with my fellow committee chairman Mondays and Tuesdays, and we kind of approach the new lineup from that point. And so, frankly, I haven't looked at this week's calendar of bills. I have two great subcommittee chairmen that work under me, Clark Boyd and Dennis Powers, and we will go through those bills early in the week, and then Wednesday evening in those subcommittees. By that time, we figure that we've seen all of the advocacy from both sides of the bill, and we'll bring them back, you know. But if it's going to require, just in general, more work for our businesses to do, if it's going to be more work and more expense, there's got to be tangible benefit provided for that can offset whatever it is that they're trying to do. And so that's the reason why I tell you, I wish I could give you exactly all my thoughts on it right now, but I'm not there yet.
I understand. I'm going through the 1,800 bills myself. I get it. But thank you from Chattanooga, and we look forward to working with you. All
righty. Thank you.
Chairman, we did get two kind of seconds to Justin's question in the chat window, and Tennessee Chamber has some concerns there, and we'll be going through over the weekend, really analyzing the bill, and we'll talk to you before committee about that next week. another actually comment, and you can pipe up, you can defend this, from a Memphis native who says the barbecue shop is the best overall. And again, you can defend that on your own if you'd like to pipe in. One final question.
I find the barbecue shop sauce to be a little bit too tomatoey. Although I think they are one of the homes of barbecue spaghetti. I'm not sure. And that's always kind of a weird thing, barbecue spaghetti. But I believe they are. I know that I prefer in the kind of the crossing of genres, barbecue pizza is much better than barbecue spaghetti. I'm just going to throw it out there and dare you to judge me for it.
Is that a tourist thing?
Chairman, the only other question I have, and you've already partially answered this. You have a broad range of issues that come through your committee and are in your jurisdiction, including workers' compensation, unemployment insurance, and workforce. How do you plan to handle all of those diverse issues?
Well, the way that I'm not a rocket scientist, even though I worked at a rocket science place in Tullahoma. What I try to do and the way I approach things is to basically bring anecdotal experiences that I've accumulated through my work history and my travels and my personal life. I'm 58 years old, and my background includes everything from workforce development. Before I got into the legislature, I used to do economic or industrial recruitment and incentive packages, pilots, industrial development grants, those type things for my clients. I'm a reformed community banker. I've been a bank director, so I understand banking issues. My brother is a lifetime natural gas pipeliner. So what I try to do, and I was a college boy that ran a right-of-way clearing crew. I was a master with a Joe Blade when my formative years, 19 to 21 years old. I grew up on a farm. So there's a lot of issues that I have firsthand experience with, or at the same time, I also have input from friends that have that. So what I do is I'll read things, and I'll call people that I know have experience with something and say, what am I missing? Or does this run true? And so that's kind of the way that I approach things. Is the Lord's blessed me with a very wide, rich life, and I just try to use those moving forward on the premises of we need to stay out of people's business the best we can.
Chairman, so we know with the chamber, you're one of the most accessible members of the legislature. Just any last words about how folks who are joining us here today might get in touch with you, or kind of your openness to talking to anybody who's joining us here?
Oh yeah, I'm one of the most accessible folks around. 901-292-3210 gets you to this. Feel free to call me, to text me. I'm not scared to get my cell phone number out. The way that government works the best, because what you'll find a lot of times is that you will see somebody's position trying to be interpreted for you and why they think that way. But if you call them and talk to them, you'll figure out quickly that that's not the case at all. And I'm not a militant guy with a lot of axes to grind. I think that we need to make sure the trains run on time, make sure that people know how to plan their business and they don't run into a bunch of regulatory upheaval along the way that they can't count for. I have one of my clients is a substantial car auto dealer in the area. He gave me a great line one time. He said, "Listen, boy," he said, "I can take bad news, but I sure hate surprises." And so that's kind of the way I am, is that we can talk through this and we may or may not agree, but I would hope that after even if you don't agree with my position on something, you can say, well, at least I understand where he's coming from. It's not going the way I want, but at least I understand that the man has given some thoughtful and deliberate thought to the matter. So that's kind of what I would say. But the way that I build that is by talking to people in the industries that it affects. Because I will say one thing, here I am, you talk about anecdotal, I've got a bill that I've got to oppose that our leader Lamberth has brought forward. And it's negatively impacting the direct to home wine shipment. And because I'm one of these weird cats, I'm a Southern Baptist, but I like to consider myself a wine snob. And so I like to get wine from Napa and Sonoma Valley, particularly, shipped to my home. And so we've got he's brought up an issue that we're going to have to work through and figure out how that all plays out. And that's just strictly from me being anecdotal. People say that I've got a Southern Baptist heart, but a Presbyterian refrigerator. And so I'm one of those weird cats, but I do enjoy, that's going to be one of the things that whenever you deal with as many members as we've got from my side of the aisle, even occasionally under the same tent, we've got to work issues out. And so that's what I'd say is we can't do that without input from y'all.
Well, Chairman Baum, thank you again for joining us today. Again, congratulations on being appointed chairman. We look forward to working closely with you. And I hope you get your cable sorted out today.
I do too. I had a tenant who lost the trade yesterday, so it's kind of like all hands on deck.
Thanks again, Chairman. Look forward to
everybody have a great day and a great weekend.
So we're going to stop there and turn it back over to Bradley. Before we do that, I will point out a lot of you have asked about Commissioner Ely's presentation from this morning. We have that, and we'll send that out to you through the email address you registered for this event with. So with that, I'm going to stop and turn it back over to our President and CEO, Bradley Jackson. Bradley.
Thank you, Ryan, and to the chamber team. Thank you all. To all of our members, hopefully next year we will be doing this in person. We're optimistic that we will. So thank you for your participation. If you have any other questions, please let us know about our legislative package or some of the things that we're working on. We put together the capital update each week, and we work to make sure it's a really comprehensive dive on the things that the chamber's working in and the things that come up too. There's a lot of issues that come up. So we thank you all for your support. I do want to recognize all the chamber staff, Carolyn, Lauren, Ryan, Susie, everybody that contributed to this. And to our panel members, we know your time is valuable, so thank you all. Have a great weekend and stay dry.